Cool.
I think you have to push a button.
Yep.
All righty. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year to what is going to be the first episode of Terry Talks, where we're just gonna be kind of a loosey-goosey discussion about fantasy, the genre, trends, where we think things are headed, and what we'd like to see happen in the genre. So it's pretty much spoilers for basically anything we're going to mention. We're gonna ask about all kinds of different books, all kinds of different stuff. So if you don't have a selective memory, click off the video now. But everyone's got a selective memory, so anything you're upset that you may have found out here, you'll forget about it about 3 months anyway. So don't stress about it too hard. But as my first guest, I am very pleased to welcome Dr. Fantasy himself, Philip Chase, 1L, which made it difficult to find things in my email because I was, spelling things incorrectly.
Yeah, my parents probably did that on purpose to confuse people. But yeah. So, but I am so honored to be the very first guest for Terry Talks, and I am very, very pleased to be here, and I always love watching your videos, and we had a great time talking about Carcanus before. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much, Cal.
Well, it's thank you for coming on. I do very much appreciate it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is there's a difference between, at least myself, what is good art and then what is sellable. So especially when it comes to things like publishing, pop music, movies, all of that sort of stuff, you get something that might be really fantastic, but there's not as much money behind it, et cetera, and it just kind of sits there. And then you have the things that we know are absolutely sellable right now. So like, what is it? After the year 1994, magic schools increased by like 400% amongst books that were being on offer, or finished manuscripts people were sending out. Everybody had to have a magic school. And the one that I've noticed most recently that's kind of started to bug me just a little bit is the prevalence of Star Wars. Basically, it's always Rebel versus Evil Empire, and you've got almost a completely binary sort of set of points of view. Whereas we have our good idealistic young rebels who are going to take down the established man.
Right.
Copy paste setting for whatever you like. And for about the last 2 years, that seems to be something included on every single blurb. So what I'm wondering is like, from a lay perspective, right? So I didn't finish college, so I get to call myself a lay person. So you did finish college, you get to call yourself a doctor. See, we have boundaries. But so how do you think that sort of thing happens? Do you think it's organically sort of driven, or are there ever any sort of top down from publishing house down that this is what we're interested in doing? Because I've heard both.
I think it can actually be both, and it can be a combination of factors. When you look at the example you gave, the rebels versus the empire, I mean, you could go back to the American Revolution, and that, I mean, it has a very prominent place in our conception of ourselves as a country. It's no accident that in Star Wars, the heroes all have American accents, and the Imperial, dudes all speak with a British accent.
Very subtle, George. Very subtle.
Yeah, very subtle, right? Sorry to our friends across the pond, but that's a very common thing in certainly in the American psyche. But I don't think it's unique to us either. I think there's something about rooting for the underdog that is, I think there's probably a psychological explanation for it, that it is it's just part of us, part of what we are, part of our humanity, that we have this tendency to not only root for the underdog, but try to identify ourselves as the underdog, even when we're not. So you see that all the time with various groups who probably enjoy a fair amount of power, but somehow want to think of themselves as being persecuted or as being underdogs. So the sort of
Yes.
persecution complex. But yeah, no, I think it's something very central to the human experience. So there is that. But that said, these things do have our trends, you know. So if there's something like a Star Wars that comes along, then a lot of people are going to try to imitate that, and that'll come to prominence. So the wizarding school thing, it also has, you know, a psychological basis. We all have this inner child that wants to feel like we've discovered a magical place where we belong, that where we're special, right? So that the Harry Potter formula works really well because it resonates psychologically with us. And so there it is. But did J.K. Rowling make that up? No, I mean, Ursula Le Guin had a wizarding school back in 1968 with Wizard of Earthsea. So
was it I thought I had it pegged as 65, but you're probably right.
It's the late 60s. But yeah, anyway, I mean, it goes way back. And this idea of coming to a place where you belong, and that has a, you know, a psychological purpose to it. But after she published Harry Potter, obviously that was the hot thing. It came to prominence and lots of imitations, lots of that became a more and more used trope, as it were. So yeah, I think it's a combination of things.
Okay. So what I would like to see explored more, like say I were to pick a novel that's coming out in 2022, and anyone who knows of one that was like this, I would like to know the name of it because I would like to read it. But the whole you know, Rebels versus Evil Empire done with a much more cynical sort of tone, because usually those stories are always mostly helpful. I'd say Joe Abercrombie did really good with this, with his recent Age of Madness about revolutionary cycles. Is like a really big theme in that book, and I enjoyed that immensely.
I did too. I love Age of Madness. I think it's best of Abercrombie. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's real, I mean, that talk about, I mean, portraying revolution in an entirely different light. The madness of it. I mean, it's called Age of Madness for a reason. And he's obviously, there's some inspiration from the French Revolution, where things just went out of hand and spiraled into this chaos and slaughter and all of that. But
the way I heard it described was, have you ever wanted to read Les Miserables with evil wizards? And I was like, that's fair. That is actually pretty fair.
Yeah, that's probably a good selling line there. I like it.
If you put all three of them together, they're about as long as a Hugo novel, aren't they? Right?
Probably, yeah. I don't know what the word count is there, but yeah, I would guess so. Yeah.
Now I'm going to be interested to know. So, have you noticed any sort of what seems to be like a copy paste? Well, I wouldn't call it a trope, because I think that word gets abused when it shouldn't be, especially in discussions having to do with really any TV show or book or anything like that.
Yeah, I think of trope as a neutral tool, basically. It can be used well and it can be used not well. But you're right. In common parlance, it is used in a denigrating way, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of come to mean cliche.
Yeah, we already have the word cliche.
Cliche is now like trope turned up to 11 to be like, oh yeah, it's so noticeable that they're doing that it must be intentional for them to be doing it and having a wink and a nod, which I don't think is always the case, but So have you noticed any like in your recent readings, have you noticed any sort of, okay, there seems to be a lot of this right now and I can't get away from it?
I mean, that's part of fantasy in general. We are a very tropey genre.
Yeah.
We love our tropes in fantasy. So, I mean, you could point to any number of, callow youth type narratives, for example, which you have in Star Wars, obviously, and to a degree you have in Harry Potter too. As Harry's a bit younger than the typical callow youth, but he's naive and he has a lot to learn, right?
Right.
But I don't think that makes it bad. I think these things exist, like I said
Mm.
before, for a reason.
'Cause I think bad, and maybe it's my tone in asking the question that implies bad, but
Uh-huh.
I don't think it doesn't even have to be bad. It just gets be some
Right.
like the evil empire versus young plucky group of rebels, which are always seem to be six archetypes and nobody else.
Yeah.
Um, it's been ever since I saw it, I can't sort of unsee it, and I wish I could go back to when I didn't
Oh.
remember that it was there. But
I'll
like,
tell you one I would
go ahead.
expect to see more of in the near
Mhm.
future is probably some virus or plague destroying humanity. we're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna see a lot more of those in a few years, I suspect. But yeah,
So
uh,
that is one thing I wouldn't mind being explored if they were going to take the premise seriously and not
yeah,
use it as a jumping off point. Do you understand what I
yeah,
mean? Where they're
yeah.
like,
An exploitative kind of, you know, we want
kind
to.
of be like, yeah, plagues are in the news right now. So there's a giant plague and people are refusing to realize that it exists. And it's like, yes, that's happened with every plague throughout history. A very, very good job and excellent including that in there. Genius.
Yeah,
And then they're like, oh, but really, we want to just go off on a quest afterwards. So they're going to have to escape Plague Land and then do, and it, but if they were to stick with their initial premise and really take it seriously and really try to investigate that, you could come
yeah.
up with some stuff that's, I've even
Oh,
read some stuff like that is really fantastic.
yeah.
But I think it's the want to be sellable that's when I see all of these like popular ideas that somebody hit number one with this specific attribute in their book. So now everyone's going to rush to try and include it to try and ride that next wave. Like,
Yeah.
like interconnected universes are getting to be a bit too damn much for me right about now. Like I'm kind of tired of it.
Multiverses. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems to be a thing at the moment, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of alternate universes seems to be a hot one at the moment. Yeah. Isn't that what's going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe or
Oh
whatever?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're now everything is possible. And now that everything is possible, it's very boring.
Yeah. I haven't honestly been following it very much, but but yeah, no, that's for sure. And it's hard to draw that line, okay, where you're saying, and it's going to differ from person to person. Somebody
Mm.
might perceive a particular writer as using this in a very cynical way
Mm.
and just going after the money and doing what everybody does, what's ever popular. But who's to say? I mean, maybe another person would look at that author and, you know, where's that author coming from? We don't know exactly, right? And
Right.
another person might see that as a very legitimate, you know, way to go about telling a story where, you know, this maybe it's a hook, but um, you see what I mean, though? I think it's possible for you to see it one way and me to see it a different way.
Mm-hmm. And
And it,
I'm not trying to imply anyone's perspective is incorrect
yeah,
unless you're, you know, blind. In that case, you wouldn't have perspective. That's a bad joke. All right. But
yeah.
so, so it's what I just had it a second ago and then I lost it.
What was it about?
I'll come back to it. Oh, the adaptation problem.
Uh-huh.
So if anything, the last 4 years in television has taught me, it's that there's no such thing as a good adaptation.
Uh-huh.
If you like the adaptation, you're a sellout and part of the problem. And if you don't like the adaptation, you're picking istrophobe. It's probably on the list. And it's really weird to me because I have only read like the first couple of Witcher books. I haven't read all of them.
Right.
And I watched the second season. I really enjoyed it. And then I
Yeah.
was like, I wonder what the discussion of this is like. Okay. Like I don't want to be a part of that.
Is
And
it as bad as the Wheel of Time discussions or
yes.
okay. Well, I think I've had enough of that myself.
Yeah, it's like I like to like things. It's like fun to like things because
Yeah.
I overthink stuff too much already. So the things that I like, it's like I give myself carte blanche to like it, even when I
Yeah.
know it's full of issues. And people telling me that it has issues. I guess it really depends on the mood. If I feel like talking about it and can do it respectfully, then I will be down to have that conversation. But if I'm just like, oh my God, here's another one, go away. It just,
Right.
I'm all over the place with that. But I don't know if that's an everybody thing or if it's just an exclusively to Cal thing. But
well, I suspect it's more than just a Cal thing. But in regard to the adaptations, and I followed the Wheel of Time first season, and AP Canavan and I did our we trade off episodes. So on my channel,
I watched all the way through. I was keeping up.
Yeah, so I picked up from that, and I'm not paying super close attention to the debates, but I definitely heard from a lot of fans of the books. Not actually, we got mostly people who were enjoying the show. The vast majority of people who left comments, at least on our videos, were people who were enjoying the show, whether they were readers of the books or not. Most of the people, but there was a significant number of people who left comments that made it very clear that they were not happy with this adaptation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are a variety of reasons, but I think the core of it is most of the time that they were book fans. So they were readers of Jordan's and Sanderson's series of Wheel of Time, who felt that in some way or other, this television series was not true to the core of the Wheel of Time books.
Yeah,
that it diverged from the books in ways that, so it goes beyond, of course, the superficial. Yes, of course, they have to change plot elements because they're squeezing all of this into these, 8 seasons with 8 episodes or whatever, and it's 14 huge books.
64 episodes for that. That is
no way. Yeah,
that is a difficult challenge. One I would not be willing to participate.
I wouldn't even try.
I'd be like, you're giving me 13 or per season, or we're out. There's not much we can do here. Like, you'll have something, but I wouldn't want to put my name attached to it with
very
those
difficult
restrictions.
task. So I think you have to grant that from the beginning. Plus, you had the added challenges of COVID, and you had the added challenge of the one actor who was playing Matt left the show in the middle of the season or toward the end, and so they had their challenges, and it was a tough task to begin with. But what we've got there, I think, is the people who made the show, I think, are fans of the books. I know some of the actors involved are fans of the books, and they're giving us an interpretation of the story, right? This is an interpretation, and I think everybody knows there's no way that this adaptation is going to match what's in my brain. Right. When I read the story, Wheel of Time, Robert Jordan's words on the page, I imagine the story took place in here, not on the page, right? What they put up on a screen is not going to be what I have in here, if I've already read these stories. So that I think everybody recognizes and acknowledges, right? What you have, though, is a vision that some people feel, and I'm one of these individuals, did not actually stray from the core elements of what Jordan was doing in the Wheel of Time. Then you have people.
I think the product that they got was rushed, and I think to a certain aspect completely cursed from like day one of trying to get this project done, and that we actually got any product at the end at all. Is something I'm very happy about. Because have you seen Winter Dragon? Have you seen Winter Dragon?
No.
Oh my God. Okay, so there was a pilot that was made late 90s, early 2000s for the first episode of a Wheel of Time show. And it didn't get picked up. It got canned. But the pilot that they made, it's like 90 minutes. It's called Winter Dragon. And Billy Zane is playing Balsamon. Or the personification of the Dark One that they're seeing in the show is Billy Zane, and he is so at like 11. The rest of it is not that great. Like it's got bad. There's not really good sets. You can tell the dialogue and things have been rushed, and because they wanted to get this out as soon as possible. but Billy Zane makes the entire experience worth sitting through, even if you just click off of it eventually because it's that bad. But yeah, I if someone can find like a non-edited copy of that somewhere, I want it, because that would just be a cool thing to have in my collection of MP4 files. But yeah, you can. It's somewhere on the internet. I'll have to find it. If I can find a link, I'll put it down below. But it is great. It's bad, but it's great.
It's great in a bad way, or bad in a great way. I don't know, but
both.
Anyway, yeah. So I thought the Wheel of Time show that we just had come out had a few good episodes. I'd say episodes 4, 5, 6, and 7 were actually pretty good. I thought they were doing some interesting storytelling, and I thought they were also trying to recreate important elements of that world by introducing things from the lore that weren't introduced in the same way in the books.
Right.
So you had, for example, the relationship between the warder and the Aes Sedai, which was something that if you read the books, you pick up in the story gradually, and it emerges as
it's like not until like book 4 or 5 that you kind of understand everything that's going on when they say that somebody has been bonded. Yeah.
All that stuff. I mean, there's a lot to it to learn. What they did in the show was they tried to kind of present a lot of that information in that one episode with the warder whose Aes Sedai died, and he ended up taking his own life.
Right.
So episode 4, 5 was it?
Yeah, I think that's 5.
I thought
that's a technique in screenwriting, though, isn't it? And it's when a concept has to have particular emotional stakes in order for it to be properly conveyed. And so generally, I mean, I've been seeing it in TV for forever, is they'll introduce a character who is well received by the audience, and they know this character is going to be well received by the audience. And then they have the consequences of whatever this concept is happen to that character. They're not part of our main cast, but they want that character to be so solid and the performance so good that whenever any other conflict might arise where this concept might be a consequence, it's almost Pavlovian that they remember the first exposure to it, and it's got to be really done really well the first time, or you've completely lost the plot, and there's nothing more you can do about it.
Right. So they had a good actor playing the warder. Stepin. He was a great actor, and the way they portrayed his loss and grief and everything else that played out in that episode, the funeral scene, it was actually bookended by funeral scenes. You had the beginning funeral scene of the people who had died in the battle, including his Aes Sedai, and then his funeral scene at the end. And I thought that was really brilliantly done. I appreciated that episode. It doesn't happen in the books, right?
Yeah, it's a bottle episode, really. Like as far as television goes, it's like like almost single location, because they immediately skip forward after that battle, and everyone's
they go back to Tar-Valon.
And then they do everything in like the same 4 or 5 corridors. It's like they're all the same 4 or 5 corridors. Now I can't unsee that either. Like they use the same sets for different port. You got to, it's TV, I get it, but I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the same window. It's like it's the exact same window.
But
I
liked it. I liked how they presented this, especially because you got to figure they're trying to win over people who have not read the books to make the show compelling for people who've never seen these books before. You have to introduce these concepts somehow or other. And so I liked the way they did that. I thought that was a cool thing to do, and it worked for me. And a lot of people were upset, I think, that they had a whole episode dedicated to something that doesn't actually happen in the books. But for me, what I felt was that they were trying to convey something that was very core, very, very important to this world in a way that they had to do it because it's a different medium. Okay, they don't have the luxury of letting the reader gradually get immersed over thousands of pages. They have to present this very important concept so that the viewers, especially those who've never read the books, will understand other things that happen later on. So I mean, they have all kinds of decisions that we don't even begin to think about to make in that regard. And so that I respect that. Did the other episodes, I thought episode 8 was unfortunately below the
I
level.
had a lot of problems with episode 1. And
1, 2, and 3, I thought were.
And then, I gradually got over the things that just bugged me about that episode as the season went on. And then episode 8 happened. And I was like, oh no, how did they make a worse episode than episode 1?
Yeah.
We've discussed some of the reasons. It's got to be the virus that shall not be named.
Right.
Barney Harris and whatever's going on with him. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah.
And then trying to get all of okay, now we've already recorded this, and now we have to make what's happening now fit that, right, which is not a great position to be in.
Nope.
Not at all.
So there's all that, but it did have the feeling of being rushed. And it was an unfortunate ending to the season. If they had finished with an episode that was as strong as 4, 5, 6, 7, then I think it would have been called a very successful season. Unfortunately, episode 8 was not as good, and 1, 2, 3 for me were way too choppy and way too. And I think the editing. The editing was awful in the first 3 episodes to me, because I think that they had a lot more story to tell, and they were only given an hour for each of those episodes, and it was like, okay, rush. And it was like the highlights almost. I felt like I was watching a preview.
Yeah, it was like a trailer almost. Like
a trailer.
You know how they cut shots like every 1.5 to 3 seconds in a movie trailer?
Yeah.
Especially when they've got that slow, somber, high note piano music going on. Ding, ding, right. Shot, ding, shot. Like I felt like that's exactly what they were doing. Like they were trying to put it all in like a 1.5-minute segment that's going to go before a music video on YouTube.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt for the first 3 episodes. And then all of a sudden, episode 4, they started telling a story with characters, and they started developing the characters and taking their time to there were some quieter moments. There's some nice pairings in episode 4. Where you had various characters' inner lives being explored a little more. And I thought that, okay, now we're getting some real storytelling here that I really liked. And they continued that, I felt, in the following episodes until episode 8. Yeah.
So the adaptation problem is usually, the way I see it, is you're never going to get exactly what's in the books. Like I think the recent Dune movie is like a really good example of someone who's really trying to stick to the source material really, really heavily. And even then there's a bunch of stuff in there that's focused on differently or done completely differently to the source material.
That's it. That's Villeneuve's vision of the story. Yeah.
So you have that, and then you have people's reaction of, I'm a fan, so I'm going to defend this, or I'm a fan and this doesn't satisfy me.
Right.
And what it ends up doing is it makes everyone look like an insane person. Like anyone involved in that discussion seems to be an insane person.
Depending on your perspective. Yeah.
Well, just my perspective is I looked at it on Reddit. Maybe that's probably my fault, being on Reddit in the first place.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's just like Did you hear that?
I heard that. I thought it was your mic.
No, somebody closed the door out there. Okay. Now I know what's going on. Kid needed to go to his room. So out of the last year or so, I know you did a top 10 books that you read in 2021. Yeah, I was wondering if there's a particular,
not top 10. I just did whatever I felt like. I didn't do the 10 thing. I think I had 7.
Yeah, I just call all of those videos that. Yeah, because everyone releases one right around the same time. Yeah, this is it's a year in review sort of thing. I can appreciate that. Out of it doesn't have to be, I guess, something you hadn't read before and read it in 2021. So if you've already read the book and then you reread it in 2021, it can still count depending on your personal feelings, I guess. But if you wanted to convince someone to read a book that you read in 2021 right now, which book would you pick, and how would you kind of give them an elevator pitch? And then I'm going to tell you mine here in just a second.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, my favorite book that I was reading for the first time, because that's what I did in my video. I said I'm not going to include rereads. So otherwise,
Took
the whole
Erickson
video
out.
Yeah, so fair. The whole video would have been the Malazan Book of the Fallen if I had just done anything I'd read, because I'd read not all the books, but most of them in 2021. So, and they were all rereads. So I had to almost exclude that because I didn't want to do a whole video on the Malazan Book of the Fallen. But I can say that The God Is Not Willing was my favorite read of 2021 as a new book.
Okay.
So yeah, I read that for the first time. It was a close one though. I really loved the conclusion to The Age of Madness as well. Abercrombie's The Wisdom of Crowds. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
I also loved Piranesi. There were a few that I'm just going over my list now, but I'll just say The God Is Not Willing was my absolute favorite book of 2021 as a new book.
Okay.
And I think it's right up there, honestly, with the Malazan Book of the Fallen for me.
I want to see what happens next, but I usually reject ranking sorts of
I hate ranking
compared to other things.
I don't rank very
bugs
well.
Me, even though I'm doing it right now with myself. Even saying that, I realize there's a hypocrisy there. No need to jump on that. The thing that just really grabbed me last year was actually Kings of Paradise.
Oh yeah, by Richard Nell.
Yeah, I read that one back to back. Like I finished it and then I went back and I started it again from the beginning and read through the whole thing because
you read all three books.
No. I only have the first one.
Right okay.
Because I do all of my stuff through audio. I very seldom get to sit down and read, so I listen to stuff. And so I finished it on audio and then turned around and put it right back at the beginning. And was like, okay, we missed some things and we are going to start writing stuff down when it gets important.
Yeah, I read it as well. In 2021. Yeah. Great book. Great book.
The second one's supposed to be out. I think
on audio.
On audio next-ish week. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to read that one twice and then probably I'm going to talk to Richard again because
cool.
I had him on. That was a blast.
He's a great guy. I had him on my channel too. He's a fantastic guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he gave me the adage, control your sons, which just made me laugh so hard as a parent. Okay, sure. Let's because that's possible while also being a decent human being. You can't do both. But no, the other one would be The Steel Remains by Michael K. Fletcher.
I haven't read that.
Raph has been talking it up for like a year. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it. And then I finally went through it, but just the first one. I haven't done the other two yet because it's a trilogy. And that book is fantastic. I did not expect it to end where it ended because I was like, obviously, there's still more that's about to, okay, that's where we're taking a pause. That's a bold place to take a pause. All right. Yeah. And I haven't started the second one yet, but some of the character work in there is so good. Like it is fantastic. I probably said fantastic like 19 times in the last 90 seconds, but I think it actually warrants it. Like I want to see how the rest of it turns out, but it is very, very good. It's got an interesting perspective because I think they were written about 10-ish years ago. So there's it's about a man who is a noble son of a house who is doing his best in the world. He's a gay man, and society is explicitly homophobic. Okay. And so the only reason he isn't dead is because he's a noble son. And so it's this weird mix of class privilege versus sex privilege versus the history of the world kind of unfolding around while he's there. And the character work in there is so good
Hmm.
Like I feel like I understand the guy, and usually it takes like 3 or 4 reads of something for me to really like, okay, I can see where all of these motivations start and pay
Yeah.
off. But it's just been very, very clear while I've been reading it. So I don't know, maybe I'm just leveling up as a reader, but I really enjoyed that book, and I think more people should read it.
Cool.
It's
Well,
fantastic.
if you and Raf are
Mhm.
recommending it, then that's that's a very strong endorsement from my perspective. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised Raph likes anything anymore. Uh,
Well, there are some things he likes. So yeah.
yeah, well, this was one of them, and I thought it was. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I have, and I already own the other ones, and I'm going to finish it probably before the month is over. But
Cool.
they're quite fantastic. Um, do you read any of the publications for like short stories and anthologies and stuff?
I haven't read too many of them. I have a couple,
Mm.
but you mean in fantasy, right?
Yeah. I have a copy of Dangerous Women somewhere, which was an
Okay.
anthology series from like, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. I
But
have
it's
a really
got,
old one called Legends, I think.
oh,
But,
what
yeah.
was the release year?
It was edited by Robert Silverberg, and I'd have to look it up, but it's from at least the 1990s, if not
Oh, okay.
before.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to see that one.
Yeah.
No, I read a really great short story that was actually an internet short. I didn't realize it was an internet short story when I got the PDF, but apparently
Hmm.
someone wrote it like in a blog, and it kind of just its legend sort of grew from there. It's not very long,
Yeah.
but it's The Thing, written from The Thing's perspective.
Okay.
Like the movie John Carpenter's The Thing, written from The Thing's perspective.
Huh.
And once I realized what he was doing in that story, their author, I don't know what their name is. Like, I don't. It's like by Wolf something online. So
Huh.
it's not even like actually accredited to a person's name. It's a screen, which
Oh.
screen name. So I don't really know anything else about that, but it is good. It's not very
Huh.
long. I read in about like what, 25, 35 minutes. It's
Okay.
really pretty short, but it is really, really good. It reminded me of what's that? I Have No Mouth, but I'm a Scream.
I've heard of that. I haven't read it, but yeah.
Oh, okay. That's another one you would like. It's very dark, like very dark, but it
Okay.
is actually really fantastic. Here we go, using that word again. I can't seem to
Yeah.
stop.
It's a good word.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, what did you have anything in particular you wanted to discuss? Because I have another literary question here in a little bit, but if there's anything you wanted to, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought maybe we could talk some Malazan stuff. But
What do you got?
there's nothing particular. I did think that maybe we could discuss the whole question of, I get asked this a lot, so I wanted to
Mhm.
ask you, as somebody who's read the series,
Too
all
many
the
times. It's
series,
okay. It's
all the
okay. You can say
series. How many times have you read it now?
13.
Okay, 13. You're still at 13? What's wrong with you? So,
Reading The Still Remains.
okay. Well, that's fair. So you've read the Malazan Book of the Fallen 13 times. You've read the other series, I assume, multiple times, or
Less
at
than
least one.
5,
Okay.
but more than 2.
Okay. So novels of the Malazan Empire,
Check. Carcanus, check.
Carcanus,
And then
and Paths to
Path. Yeah.
Ascendancy.
I always get that
Uh,
name wrong. I keep calling it Paths. No, that's not right.
yeah. And Bocaline and Corbel Broach, of course, the novellas.
Oh, the novellas, I think I've only read those twice.
Oh,
Yes.
Ruth and Bad's gonna be upset with you.
Well, when I finally release my response video, he can come at me. All right.
I look forward to seeing that. So, but anyway, I get asked a lot, what order do I read these in? How do I do this, this series? And the standard answer is publication order, right? The easiest thing to tell people is publication order. But I'm not sure that is the best answer all the time. So what are your
Kinda.
thoughts on the whole, not just what order do I read these in, but let's talk a little bit about how all these different series relate to one another and how they support each other and supplement each other. So, but what are your thoughts on the reading order question?
Well, publication order is the bog standard answer. It's what the publishers say. It's what the authors say.
Right. Although if you talk to the authors, I haven't talked to Steven Erickson so much about this, but I did talk to Ian Esselmont once. And he was like, whatever, it doesn't really matter that much. So he was much less rigid about it than you might think. So, yeah.
Well, it's like you can go and ask people what order to read Discworld in. Yeah. And you'll get a different answer from just about anyone who reads Pratchett.
Right.
But publication order is also the bog standard answer there. Because of course, I want you to read all of them. But I'm
not going to. I'm only going to read the Mort books, and I'm going to read the City Watch books, and I'm going to read the Witch books, and maybe a few others. But I don't want to read them all. So I just want to, do this and that.
You're depriving yourself of more Pratchett, and that's a cell phone if I've ever heard one. But as far as the way I did it was I read book 1 and then read book 2 and then went back and read books 1 and 2 again. I mean, of the Book of the Fallen, I read Gardens and then Dead House, and then I read Gardens and then Dead House again. And then I read Memories of Ice, and then I read House of Change, and then I realized I still didn't have all of this information together. So I went back and I reread them like that, and then read the 5th book, and then went back and read them like that.
Wow.
So, and all the way to the last book. Some books I skipped depending on.
Okay, so in other words, you didn't read them in publication order because you finished the Malazan book.
I finished the Book of the Fallen first, and then I ended up with a copy of Fall of Light instead of Forge of Darkness, and tried to read that and had no idea what was happening. And then finally read the introductory part to the book where it says book 2, and was very upset with myself. So I went and bought Forge of Darkness and then read those, and then was very confused even more because I was like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And then I read all of Cam's stuff, the novels of the Malazan Empire. And then I was like, oh, you can put these together in like chronological order, sort of. There's actually a master chronological order list, like where someone went down to like the chapter of each book and put them in what this person believes to be chronological order, because timelines being a little confusing is a bit of a meme amongst the Malazan community, which is understandable. I completely get that.
That's almost deliberate. Yeah.
Almost deliberate. They both said they did it on purpose.
It is deliberate.
They both said they did it on purpose.
Yeah. So how many Malazan readers have started out by reading everything in publication order? I bet you a small minority actually did it that way.
You're right. Because I run the Moonspawn Discord server, which is a Malazan focused Discord server. Right. And so I've seen people show up having not read anything and start from the beginning. Wherever the only person who started with Knight of Knives was one person so far. They started with Knight of Knives. Interesting. And then they were like, so which one's next? And I'm like, well, you can do, I wouldn't do Return of the Crimson Guard right now, but you can if you want to, or you can do Gardens of the Moon or what. So it's one of my mods started with Midnight Tides because that's the book her dad gave her. And so
it actually starts.
She read Midnight Tides. Yeah, it makes sense.
Chronologically, it starts before Gardens of the Moon, right?
Yeah. He didn't give her any more information than that. He knew what he was getting her into, but he was like, hey, here, read this one. And so she read it and then figured out she was on book 5 and was like, how in the world is this book 5? And then started at the beginning again. But the amount of people who actually go through publication order is okay, so it's a very specific subset of people. One, people that are interested in being on Discord, which I'm starting to understand that the general population of Discord in general maybe not be as cool as the random small server I happen to be a part of. So it's a subset of that population, which is also interested in fantasy books, which is also interested in very large narratives of fantasy books. And then from those, you have people who heard it would be fun to start and started reading it and then decided it wasn't for them and then left, which I'd say is about 50% of the people who join the server.
Wow.
They are interested in the idea of reading the whole thing, and then they start reading it, and maybe what they heard from other people isn't what they're getting when they read it. And so they say, okay, well, this isn't what I wanted, so I'm not going to read it anymore. And they stop. And then of people who finish, the most common is people who read through Book of the Fallen first.
Yeah.
Not everyone continues after that. One of the guys who's been in the service for the longest time got all the way to the Crippled God and then was disappointed by the points of view in that book and soured him on the whole thing. He was mad about it, which is completely valid, I guess, from his point of view. Yeah. And that was it. They're still part of the service, still hang out, still talk to people. They're no longer interested in the whole thing because of the way it finished to them, which I'm not going to judge him for that. It really is his own thing. I do think he's wrong.
But he still wants to be part of the community where they're talking about the books.
So, so like people who finish the Book of the Fallen and decide they don't want to read anything else is like the next one after people who quit in the middle. And then after that, you'll have people who are interested in also doing the Malazan of the Novels Empire. Malazan Empire. Yeah. And generally those people, which sounds really bad when you just generalize a whole group of people by those people, but they generally want to do publication order because they're trying to get the entire experience. Completionists, I guess you'd call them. And there's not a lot of people who are willing to sit down and read 25 novels back to back in the same place. They may get very burnt out or tired or insert reason there. So the way I did was I started with the Book of the Fallen, and then we're really trying to understand it because it was blowing my mind while I was reading it. So I kept really digging into it while I was going through it, and then did the same thing for the Cam novels later on.
Interesting.
But that, it's not the average experience. And then some of the comments I read on in fantasy spaces online is that Malazan fans are the most militant read the book I like right now people, which is shocking to me because I've known a lot of Sanderson fans. Got them. That's a joke. Kind of. Nothing against either of the authors. That's not the point. You can't decide what someone does with your art once you've released it. That's the kind of scary part.
That's for sure. Yeah. And I think every fandom has that element for sure. I mean, there's no fandom on earth that doesn't have its people who sometimes get a little carried away or fanatical or forget that there are other types of human beings out there. So
right. That was a good way to put it. I'm not actually wearing my hat. I just have it positioned thusly.
It's pretty close. Yeah.
Right. Depth of field isn't right.
It looks tiny though.
Right. It does look like a really small hat. The actual small hat is that one, but
yeah, that works.
Way too small for my head.
So I actually read the Malazan Book of the Fallen a few years ago and knew when I finished it that I was going to be rereading it. But I also thought to myself, I think I need to read all these other things that I've heard of too. This Esselmont guy stuff, and there's this Carcanis thing out there, which I'm pretty sure I was pronouncing a very different way at first. But
I was saying Carkansas for like 2 years.
That's funny. But anyway, I went from Malazan Book of the Fallen to doing my reread of Malazan Book of the Fallen. And in the middle of it, I read Bocaline and Corbel Broach, the 6 novellas that are out in the published form. And I've been reading novels of Malazan. Oh, and I forgot to mention that in addition to reading, before I started my reread, I actually read Carcanis and I read Path to Ascendancy. So I read Esselmon's Path to Ascendancy before I started novels of the Malazan Empire.
Oh, that might have been, that's probably a smarter way to do it.
Well, I don't think there's a wrong way. This is my point, really. I don't think there's a wrong way to do this because a lot of people express concern to me, and these are very nice people, well-meaning fans, saying, "Oh no, you shouldn't read Path to Ascendancy first because you're going to miss all the Easter eggs from novels of the Malazan Empire." And I was like, "Yeah, but don't I get them in reverse when I read?" Path to Ascendancy first, I get to see these characters later on and see what they become. So I kind of like
probably the same type of, again, this sounds bad generalizing, same type of person, but the Star Wars fans who will tell you start with A New Hope and then go to the prequels and then forget the other movies exist or whatever their opinion is. That just seems to be the most common one. Because if you start at The Phantom Menace, the Luke, I am your father moment has not nearly as much weight as it does if you did it in the order it was released. That makes any sense, which is a valid thing to think. But
I watched them all in release order because I actually was around for the original films.
I got the special edition VHSs, which were
cool. In the 80s.
Oh, no. This was the 1997 release.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Because the Phantom Menace was already on the horizon. They knew they were making it. It already.
That's when Lucas added all that awful CGI stuff to it. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Added the musical number in Jabba's palace.
Yeah.
Which is something. You can just look it up and find it on YouTube, but it is something. I don't know if I would have done that, but it exists and people should see it because it is horrifying, but it is also hilarious.
Somebody should have told him to stop tinkering at a certain point, but oh well. Yeah,
it's like musicians do. Throat bubble. Have you ever had that happen?
Sometimes, yeah,
where it's like it just gets stuck right there and makes your voice raised by like an octave or something.
Yeah,
but like musicians do that a lot though, where they'll have an EP with a certain song on it, and they got it as best they could for that EP. And then they're going into like maybe their second or third album, if they're a very successful musician, and they're like, I didn't get that right. I want to get that right.
Don't do it.
And they go and they, sometimes it's better.
Yeah.
I won't say that's the default setting, is that sometimes it is better, but I understand the want or the need almost to be like, I didn't equip myself well there. I want to do it better. I understand that.
Yeah. In the case of the original Star Wars films, I don't think he made them better by adding the CGI stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if he had tried it today, now that the CGI stuff has become a little more sophisticated, he could have made it look more seamless than it does. But right now it looks like somebody just plopped these things in there and they don't fit.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly what happened. Who is it? I think it's either Chris Tucker or Chris Rock. I can't remember which right now. That had themselves edited into a cut of the original Star Wars movies.
Oh, really?
So they went and acted out like lines and stuff. And then like in front of blue screen. And then had themselves dropped in to different scenes in the movie. Like they're a character who's there the entire time, but no one acknowledges that they exist. It's because, they're not actually interacting with the movie. I think that's hilarious and fantastic, and want to do something like that myself one day because that sounds fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's such the Star Wars story, particularly the original trilogy, it has reached such an iconic status in the culture that there are so many great ways to when it's made fun of to the degree that it is, it's reached a real iconic status. So yeah,
a certain level of ubiquity in order to be a punchline that hard.
Yeah, it's a tribute in a way. Lord of the Rings films have been, I think, achieved a similar status. The original, like Peter Jackson's, Lord of the Rings. There are very few films and franchises that get to be achieve that status, I think. So Harry Potter probably also as a more
Yeah,
recent example. Yeah.
yeah. I would say the MCU is right now the
Yeah.
modern day example of something that has reached that level of cultural ubiquity.
Yeah.
Because it's inescapable now, and I wish I could, because I am tired of all of that.
Yeah.
What
I started I the last one I watched was the Avengers finale, whatever that was.
Endgame?
Endgame. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I was
which
like,
is a
I
Star Trek
think
episode, but okay.
I think I'm done now. I
Mm,
thought, I grew up with the comics, of course, when I
right.
was a kid in the 1970s and right up into the mid 80s is when I stopped collecting.
Ah,
So I
yeah.
have a lot of the comics that these movies are based on.
Right. So
Because a lot of it,
you've got
yeah.
the original Thanos snap panel somewhere in
I
your house.
don't think I have that one, but I do have some Avengers. I was much more into Spider-Man though and
Oh
the
yeah.
X-Men than but I have some Avengers and some mostly Marvel stuff. I do have some DC stuff too, but yeah.
The ones I collected were Daredevil.
I have Daredevil. I
I
have
tried to collect a
Paramount.
lot of Daredevil
Yeah.
when I was 15, 16. And
Yeah.
then I had The Long Halloween, the Batman comic book,
Okay.
which is like, it was released in issues, but it's been compiled together in a single volume, which is the entire arc of
Okay.
Long Halloween, which is kind of where The Dark Knight got its base story from.
Okay.
Specifically about Harvey Dent, Two-Face, and the Joker all interacting in Gotham. It's one of my favorite Batman stories. I just love that story. I read it and I'll reread it again. After we get done here, I'm gonna probably go pull it out of the closet and reread it. It takes about an hour,
Cool.
but
Well, the
it's
film's
really
good
good.
too. The Dark Knight and
Yeah,
those. Yeah.
that's one of those lightning in a bottle films.
Yeah.
Like because the third movie is not good.
Mm-mm.
Like it's
The
got
one with Bane.
yeah, it's got shoddy stunt work. Some of the editing doesn't make sense. Some of the takes that were used seriously in that movie are baffling to me.
Yeah.
Like, why would you pick that take in the editing room? Somebody needs to go home. They need to sleep it off. They spent too long in the editing bay, which I can completely understand.
Yeah.
Spend too long in the editing bay, you will be an insane person. Especially if you're looking at like something you did in the editing bay. Like,
Oh yeah.
if I'm doing somebody else's stuff, I have no problem being in it. But if I'm in it, I'm like, oh God.
That messes with your head.
Oh yeah, I think way too much about it.
Yeah.
What's something you want to do in this this new year on your channel, or anything you may be working on personally that you just want people to know about?
Oh goodness. Well,
Because I've heard some rumors.
Yeah.
So if you want me to cut this out, I will. But I've heard rumors that you are putting together some of your own writings and trying to compile them into a format which may be publishable for people to consume. And can you confirm or deny that here today? We'll get the scoop, as it were.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been working on a fantasy trilogy for this summer will be 18 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's been a long time, and it's been a real process of where the story has evolved from something that I wrote on my own to the point where I eventually did get an agent, a literary agent. And that agent was really helpful to me in helping me improve what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been working for a few years with him. And I recently have been working a lot more on the books in an effort to make them as good as I can, with some help from a critical dragon.
Yeah, I can imagine lots of burned manuscripts. That's what dragons
Yeah,
do.
there are some little
You could
scorch
say there's
marks.
some fireballs
There's some
on
scorch
it.
marks there. Yeah. Some good scorch marks though. Some really
Okay.
good ones. But yeah, no, this is true. I am it's funny because every time you think you have written a book, but you can't make any better,
Yeah.
you put it away for a few months and you go back to it and you realize, oh, I can make this better. Or better yet, you get somebody who's really good at reading stories and then analyzing stories and editing to look at it, and you pay that person because
Yeah.
they get paid.
It's just the right, yeah, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, especially if that person is a professional. So, but that's if you, if you want it to be as good as it can be, you have to do things like that. So yeah, I am definitely hoping that this will be my year to get a publisher.
Okay.
So we'll see. That I make the books as great as I can, and then I give them to my agent, and it's out of my hands at that point. So
Right.
and unless I go eventually maybe a self-publishing route, but I really want to try the traditional route first.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I understand the because I can make songs or whatever on my computer and release them on YouTube, but there's a certain amount of polish that comes with what would be considered the industry standard to getting something released or dropped or whatever the word is you want to use. So I completely understand that. I've got a few. I've got a couple of published authors in the Moonspawn. But they did the self-publishing route, and they either have a link for a Kindle, or they had a very limited run of some paperbacks, and that's about it. So what I want to do is in this new year, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to let people know about cool things that I've read that maybe aren't Brandon Sanderson. Maybe they're not Brandon Sanderson. And if that appeals to anybody at all, then then maybe they should check them out. So that's what I'm really trying to do in 2022 is I've read, you go on any fantasy forum and people will tell you, oh yeah, I've read Lord of the Rings, I've read Game of Thrones, I read the Kingkiller Chronicles, and that's kind of it. And then they say, oh yeah, what else should I read? And you're like, okay, where do I even begin? Instead of trying to give people what I would consider bog standard answers like Tad Williams or Terry Brooks, not Terry Pratchett because he's near and dear to my heart, but just throw names out there that have been established in the genre for so long. Right. I want to see what new people are doing and how strange and wonderful this sort of stuff can get. I have a copy of a Kindle book that I've read like twice from a friend of mine online, and it's good. And I want other people to read this stuff. And if you've been putting passion or something into it and no one's got a chance to see it yet, I want people to be able to see it, because what's the point, otherwise of making something if nobody else gets to experience it with you. So if you are things start moving in any sort of way, you let us know. We will get the hype train building because I want to read it.
Okay.
Even if nobody else does, I do. So tell me about it. And that goes for everybody. If you're working on something, tell me what it is. I want to know what it is. I want to listen to it. I want to read it. I want to look at the picture. I want to see what people are making, because it inspires me to make stuff when I see other people making stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think creativity works that way. Absolutely. Yeah. So
2021 was a terrible year, almost as bad as 2020.
Yeah.
And so moving into 2022, I am determined to have fun and to want to know what other people are doing to have fun, things I want to make. So tell me about your stuff. Anybody and everybody. I'm interested in hearing it.
Yeah. So I just use the word fantastic. So
I'm going to be Mr. Fantastic. You can be Dr. Fantasy, and AP can be Professor Fireballs. I will be Mr. Fantastic because that's the thing that I say probably the most about things that I like.
Well, there are worse things to be than that. So
Yeah, there's a movie with Aragorn in it called Captain Fantastic that I haven't watched yet, but
Oh, I've seen that film. It's really good.
oh, it is. Okay,
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a great film.
I need to find where it's streaming so that I can watch it.
Yeah,
Eventually.
Viggo Mortensen's good. He's a talented guy.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
So if you got to pick one thing that you wanted to see more of in the genre, and by the genre, speculative fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever, that you want to see a lot more of, that
okay.
maybe you haven't seen a lot of,
Yeah.
what would it be, and how would you like it presented?
Wow. I'd like to see more authors who just go for it. In the way that Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont do. I think in the Dark Tower series that I'm reading right now by Stephen King, you see
Ooh.
him going for it, just doing what comes from his psyche. I think is what comes out of these authors sometimes.
What book are you on for Dark Tower?
I just finished Wizard and Glass.
Oh, okay, you're there. All right,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
I love that book.
I do
that
too.
book is fantastic.
In fact, my review should come out tomorrow on
Oh
Wizard.
heck yes! I'm gonna blow up your comment section.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. No, it's a great book, and I love the way. So they're very different authors, of course, Erickson.
They're
and
both
King,
named Stephen though.
but they're both named Stephen with different spelling. But yeah,
Yeah, one of them is spelled the correct way.
yeah, one of them. We won't say which, but anyway,
my name is also spelled the correct way. So
okay, oh, that's a clue then. Okay. But yeah, no, they're just I love how these authors go for it. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, there's
Like,
a section right towards the end of the flashback portion in Wizard and Glass, where it's the night of the festival and everything is getting started, and this is the beginning of the end of this portion of the book before you go back to the present. Like everything has been leading up to this, and he takes like 5-6 pages to take like a quick zoom. It's like Hood in Darujistan. It's that level of I am just going to explore everything that's going on in this moment before the world changes forever.
Yeah.
That he does there that is just so awesome. Like it's one of my favorite passages. Like just to reread. Brilliant. It's like it's almost poetry in its own way.
Yeah.
And I love that section of the book. And I also, love Hood arriving in Darujistan, but
that's incredible. And Toll the Hounds, yeah. So I mean, these authors, there's a characteristic there where it could end up being something where you're like, what did I just read? And then that was so awesome, and they're not afraid to do that. So I'd love to see more of that sort of thing. And I think these are pretty outside the box thinkers who do stuff like that. But I'm enjoying that. As I get older, I think I'm more receptive to things that are just a little bit weirder and a little bit more different. Like I also mentioned Piranesi before. That's another one that's very outside the box, and so cool. I don't know if you read that one or not.
I was bored by it.
You were bored by it. Okay. Yeah, it's a good neutral face you're making there, but yeah.
I'll probably have to reread it. But when I went, I was like, okay, because I knew what was going on about a third of the way through the book, and I knew that I knew. And then the end of the book happened, and then I was like, okay, yeah, I knew it. And that's not her fault. That's probably my fault. But because I love Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
It's a book where very different.
But night and day.
Piranesi is a book that you don't read for the plot; you read for the atmosphere, I think. And
that is a good way of putting.
Yeah, I think if you're reading it for the atmosphere and for just the experience of the feeling you have in that moment, then you would derive more from it than if you're reading for the plot and you figured it out a third of the way and you're like, oh, come on, why bother?
So I need to read it like a Lovecraft book.
Perhaps.
Because let's be honest, I don't read Lovecraft for the plot. Like the mind states he's able to create is the reason why it's so interesting to me.
Yeah. So that's what I think too. Like, so what Clark does there, there's an ambiguity all the way through. Are we meant to take this on a more literal level, or are we meant to take this as a metaphor? Are we in this person's head, or are we actually in this portal world? What is this? And you can hold all these interpretations simultaneously. And for me, it was really more of an immersive experience of being in the atmosphere. And also, I loved the character as well, the main character, and he felt a certain.
It's like a very, very. I don't want to use the childlike, but it
childlike is a good word. It's a good word.
Adolescent, maybe.
Yeah. No, I think childlike is actually a good word. Not childish, but childlike.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was conflating those two. You're right.
Yeah.
Because, like, once I started to try and put things together with what was going on, I was like, oh, I think I know what's going on here. Right. It was my guess that was probably right, but I was hoping for more of an exploration about what that conflict meant. And really, we just kind of sit with it, and then it's over.
Right.
So that bugged me. So maybe I do need to read it. You're probably right. But
but I think what she's doing there is she's not giving us a narrative that has a neat ending. And somehow I feel like that's very authentic. She's definitely, this is definitely outside the box. Like most stories, you want to have this satisfying ending where it's very clear, there's a resolution, et cetera, which she doesn't give us that. And that maybe a lot of people find that unsatisfying, perhaps. But for me, I felt like I was just in a moment of life. A little bit like, have you ever read Virginia Woolf before? Mrs. Dalloway?
The poem?
No, it's a novel. Mrs. Dalloway. There's been a lot of stuff.
I don't think so.
Okay, so Virginia Woolf, early 20th century author. I'm
thinking of the play. Who's Afraid of
Virginia Woolf? Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking of. That's what I remember about Virginia Woolf. I don't.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff based on Virginia Woolf, including the book and the movie The Hours. But
the Cate Blanchett movie?
Is she in that? Cate Blanchett? Nicole Kidman is in it, I think. And The Hours is with Nicole Kidman, and there's some who else is in there? Meryl Streep is in it. And
I'm thinking Big Little Lies.
Which
also has Nicole Kidman and Meryl Streep.
Wow.
Cate Blanchett is also in that show. So I've just kind of.
I don't think Cate Blanchett is in The Hours, though. She's a great actor, but she's not in The Hours. Who else is in it? I can't. Their names are escaping me. Ed. What's his name?
Ed Helms.
Ed something. Can't remember. But anyway, great movie. But anyway, the book I'm talking about is Mrs. Dalloway, and it's Stream of Consciousness. But what she captures in that book is the inner workings of the human mind. And if you're looking for a plot, God help you, because you're not going to find one. What you will get, if you're open to it, is an incredible reflection of how the human mind works, how memory works, how people's identities are formed from their experiences and their interactions with other people, and how your identity isn't just you, it's a product of you and all the other people you interact with. And It's a really cool book if you're open to it. So Piranesi reminds me a little bit of that. Piranesi is actually more linear than Mrs. Dalloway.
The themes are very, very similar.
Yeah,
based off of the
themes are very similar. Yeah,
just described that.
Yeah,
but
it's a classic.
It's like I tried to read, what was it? Gravity's Rainbow. The Thomas Pynchon novel, because I heard it was the hardest book ever to read. I read it. I don't really know what happened in that book. I'm perfectly honest with you. Something about a rocket and the prostitute, and and maybe a captain who was a spy, who was also not a spy, who also may have been a scientist. That's what I remember about that book. But from reading what other people have written about it, it's also a discussion about how the point of view character, because there's arguments to say that all the book is one point of view character, and then one that, no, these are all different people, but they're also the same person. There's different schools of thought on it. But it's also the about the negotiation, because it really, you're negotiating with everyone else who you interact with what your identity is. And when you really try to pick at that, people kind of go a little nutty from time to time. Like the person trying to negotiate it themselves, the people interacting with that person, and then the people witnessing those interactions, and then the people witnessing the person witnessing that interaction, because it goes back and back, because that's the novel is kind of like Ouroboros strip or Mobius strip in that way, in the way that it kind of goes in circles. But yeah, if anyone knows what Gravity's Rainbow means, I am more than willing to listen. I have no idea. I'll probably have to reread that one too and actually write stuff down.
Well, the good news is we're not going to run out of stuff to read.
You're right. You're right. I'm about to hit 200 books in my Audible library.
Wow.
Which is a lot. I went back and went through there and sorted by author and was like, oh, I have a lot of Erickson, a lot of King, and a lot of Sanderson in here. So
cool.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Just it is what it is. So the authors that really swing for the fences, to use an old tired baseball expression, and no one watches baseball anymore, but well, you want to see more of that. And I do too, but I also only want to see it if I like it.
Yeah, that is kind of an important proviso, I suppose. Yeah.
I think the thing I've come to most respect about when something goes spectacularly wrong and you can see it going wrong is sometimes that is intentional by the person who's making it to elicit a specific reaction, which totally fine. That's a valid thing to try and do as an artist. But I've come to much more respect people who have made a choice and are committed to that choice to really explore what it is. And because like the premises can be absolutely outrageous and ridiculous, but with enough courage and commitment, it can really be almost a sublime experience to get that, which is what I'm looking for. So
cool. Yeah.
Anything else you want to tell the folks at home? Tell the folks at home what sublime means.
Ooh, it's a great word. AP and I both have used the word in reference to the Malazan series. But
I thought it meant lemon for the longest time.
What was that?
I said I thought it meant lemon for the longest time.
Oh, yeah. No,
it's sublime.
It's under the, oh gosh, yeah. Sublime.
You're welcome.
Ouch, ouch, ouch. Yeah.
All righty. Yeah, I'm fixing to have to go make dinner here in just a minute.
Okay, well, it's been a real pleasure, Cal, and I'm wishing you the best for this series. And do you have another person lined up, or is that?
I've got two so far planned in advance, and I'm just gonna try to keep stacking two more every single time to bring it around.
Beautiful.
So
yeah,
we'll see how well this works out.
Okay, well, and I'd also like to thank your viewers for watching this, and I will most certainly be tuning in for whoever's next.
All righty. Thanks again for stopping by. I very much appreciate it. If you ever want to try to convince me that a book is good that I don't like, I'm always willing to listen.
Okay.
But,
yeah, I will work on you for Piranesi a little bit. There.
Okay. I'm gonna probably have to get a copy of it. But yeah, thanks again for coming. And all right, everybody, I hope you are having a fantastic new year. Stop auto focusing, camera.